Hi, my name is Dave Reske, CEO of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of Marketing in the Now, where we talk about the best ideas in marketing and digital marketing. And my guest today is Justin Steinman, CMO of Therapy Brands and the former CMO of Definitive Healthcare. He's also a VP at Aetna and CMO at GE Healthcare. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
You've had some amazing experiences in senior marketing roles at some of the top healthcare companies in America. And I should ask you, which is your favorite? Do you have a favorite child in all those?
I loved each and every one of them. You can't pick any of your favorite childs. Each one of them had unique opportunities, unique challenges, and unique successes. I think all of them have made me into the person that I am today.
That's awesome. Well, I'm sure they've all had their exciting times and challenges, and I think you may be able to share some of those experiences with our listeners here today. But you and I have been talking about an important topic in leadership, and especially in today's model of being a CMO, and that is the idea of being a data-driven CMO. And I just wanted to ask you some questions about that, just to get your perspective on that to help our listeners just understand what that means and what they can take away from that to help them be more successful. So what does it mean to be a data-driven CMO?
Well, I think, not to put too fine a point on it, being a data-driven CMO is pretty much equal to surviving as a CMO, much less excelling as a CMO. You know, uh, I'm of the age where I've been working in marketing now for almost 30 years, and we have been seeing a real evolution in those 30 years. If you want to think back pre-iPhone, pre-digital, pre-internet, we throw a banner up on, Route 128 outside Boston or a billboard and hope for the best. How do you measure the success of that? I don't know. Count the number of cars that drive by. We would do advertising on TV and there'd be Nielsen ratings. You'd put an ad in Time Magazine or the Boston Globe and you'd hope for the best. And now, as we move into this digital online world, we suddenly had the ability to manage everything. And marketing has always been a mixture of art and science. I would tell you that it has moved over the past 30 years a little bit more towards science, where you can have data to inform your decisions. And it's important that data informs your decisions, but does not drive your decisions, right? Because there's good creative and there's bad creative. And you know it when you see it, right? But you can apply data to assess the effectiveness of that creative, of those ads. Data in particular is helpful in the demand gen funnel. We can talk about that a little bit more if you'd like. But what this data ultimately enables you to do is have conversations with your stakeholders outside marketing. Uh, Again, brand, creative, subjective, right? Your CEO may not like what the color of, the latest advertisement or internet banner, whatever. The board may say, you know what? We want to know how much revenue have you driven today? Talk to me about that. What's the return on our investment? We gave you X millions of dollars. Tell me down to the penny how much we're getting for our X millions of dollars of investment. Now, while you can't do that, because ultimately, it's a team effort and you're working with sales and product and everybody else, you can use data to quantify the inputs and the outputs and help people who aren't marketers understand how to evaluate marketing and ultimately use that to build your business case to get more investment in the function to give your team more capability and capacity to get things done. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. I touched on a lot of different things there, but at the end of the day, it's about providing measurement to what used to be unmeasurable.
Yeah, that's no, I'm glad you touched on a bunch of things there. We're going to dig deep into a number of things you said, but I just want to let our audience kind of understand the types of data you're talking about. So, because when you say being a data-driven CMO, there's some people out there that would say, well, what is that one piece of data? And other people are saying, well, there's an infinite amount of data. There's like so much data out
Yeah.
there that how do you kind of measure that? So, can you give some examples of like the kinds of data that a CMO really needs to be thinking about, almost at the top of your head? Like, what is like the if you had to wake up and you're in this role now, when you wake up every day, what are the top two, three, four pieces of data that you just need to have at the top of your head?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you that the top three pieces of data that I look at not only every morning, but also every afternoon and probably every evening are number of MQLs generated, MQL to SQL conversion rate, and bookings.
Hmm.
Those are the three things. And I look at them broken down on a product line level, and I look at them from both new business and cross sell. And so if you were to sit here and say, Justin, how many MQLs did your team deliver yesterday for X product line for your mental health solo practice product? I could confidently tell you what it was. I
Hmm.
got the dashboard actually up here on my other monitor, right? Because I was looking at it before we hopped on the call today. And let me tell you why each of those metrics is important, right? And we'll start from the bottom. Bookings. At the end of the day, we are a revenue driving function, right? No revenue coming in the door, no money to spend on marketing, no money to pay all of our paychecks, right? Why are you in business? And so I use bookings because I work in a software and subscription business. And, that means we recognize revenue 1/12 of the size of a deal over the course of a year, 1/12 every month. But the proxy for us is bookings. How long did the customer commit to and for how much dollars? And that's a shared metric that I have with our chief revenue officer. And he and I talk about where we are bookings twice a day at least,
Hmm.
right? Then I think about the number of MQLs that we're generating. Our job is to bring in marketing qualified leads at the top of the funnel. But it's real easy to get you leads if you don't care about quality, right? I mean, we're all pretty smart. I could go spend a ton of money on Google search and just bring them all in. The question is, what's your MQL to SQL conversion rate?
Hmm.
And that's important because in every marketing organization that I've ever set up, the only way for an MQL to be an SQL is if the sales team elevates its status. There's nobody in marketing, and I actually put it into the system. We do not have permission as marketers in the system to move things to a sales qualified lead. Only the sales team does. So I have a benchmark rate for most of our products of 40% MQL to SQL conversion rate. And if a product falls below that 40% benchmark, I'm on the head, not on the phone, not with the CRO, but actually the head of that sales team. Why don't you like our leads? What's going wrong? Are they not qualified? Is there no budget? Do they have no authority? Are we in the wrong segment? There's a million questions that I could be asking them, and I ask all those questions because at the end of the day, I want to bring in a lot of leads, but I want them to be highly qualified so that I'm not wasting my sales team's time. So those are the three metrics that I think about. I got tons of other ones that we could talk about, but those are my top three.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So it strikes me that you've worked for large and mature organizations, right? So you've
Yes.
got business models that work, you've got product that's selling, you've got advertising that works, and so you're adjusting the numbers on a model that's really working, right? So so is the CMO role differently maybe in a startup where they don't have that, where they're kind of just trying to figure out really getting something working at the beginning? Or are
Well,
the
it's
numbers
interesting.
going to be the same? Are they still going to be focused on the same kinds of metrics?
So it's funny. The model that I just walked you through, I learned when I was at GE Healthcare IT,
Hmm.
right? And this is GE back in the day, 15 years ago. And, the joke was if you don't know your numbers at GE, you're not going to be in your job for very long. You had to know your numbers, and your boss will call you. Where are we? What are the numbers? And there was really never any penalty at GE for having bad numbers. But if you didn't know your numbers, it was a tough conversation. But that model that I learned, I have brought with me to both Definitive Healthcare and now to therapy brands. And in doing so and bringing that model, you adjust the targets, but a marketing funnel is a marketing funnel.
Hmm.
The difference here is at both DH and therapy brands, I built the model in Excel when I walked in the door, or when I was at GE. It was being handed to me. I had a report from beautiful report coming from the finance team. I could drill into it, this, that, the other. Here I walk in the door and I'm like, okay, gang, we're going to set this funnel up. I need to know our MQLs. We're using HubSpot here and Salesforce, right? That data exists in HubSpot and Salesforce. I worked with the FP&A team. I taught them to think about the model, and then we build out the spreadsheet that I get. And so they build me a spreadsheet pulling all the data every day. but there's not a team of people interpreting it for me. I'm interpreting it for myself. And that's the biggest difference, right? My hands get dirty, really dirty every day here.
Yeah, that's great. So some would say that the CMO's role should be more focused on strategy, big picture, right? So like the big messages, and then connecting with the other C-suite executives to make sure we've got alignment between the organizations and not deep into the data side. And so what would you say to CMO who would say, you know what, the data, I got people to do that. I'm really focused on the message and the markets and the strategy, and I'm delegating the data to someone else.
Well, first off, I'll never presume to tell anybody else how to do their job. All I can simply tell you is that I have found the key to my success has been both the depth and the breadth, right? I live in the data, I understand the data, I know what's going on. And that gives me an immense amount of credibility when I walk into our CFO's office, who by definition is a numbers guy. And I start talking with him, and he's like, "So, Justin, what is your customer acquisition cost?" And I can, "Oh, here's this. How do you know that? Because of this data, and this data, right?" And I tracked. And by the way, did you know that I brought our cost per lead down on Google by 5x over the past 6 months? No, I didn't. Yeah, actually, we're spending more to acquire a lead on Google than the average deal size. So, then when budget time comes around, the CFO's in his head going, all right, Justin's going to give me a good return on my investment, and he's more confident to give me money. Everybody looks at marketing and goes, oh, those guys spend a lot of money. Be careful, right? Do they really know what they're spending it on? I would tell you that my command of the data gives confidence in that, right? Another piece of data that we use a lot are UTMs, right? And UTMs, they are basically the little code that gets passed onto your website when you generate a free trial or a demo that says, where did the lead come from? So, one of CFO's or my CEO's favorite question is, Justin, what are our most effective channels? Pretty logical question for a CEO to ask a CMO, right? What are your most effective marketing channels? Are we doing better in Google search? Are all those webinars you're doing working? You spent a lot of money on, display advertising. We went to this event, you know, what's best, what's working, what's not? Well, without UTMs, I'm like, well, I think this feels like that was an effective channel versus I can go, 27% of our leads last quarter came from Google search confidently. You think that makes my CEO feel good about my understanding of the business and what he's asking me to do?
Hmm.
And then that enhances my credibility when I go into his office and say, we need to do a big campaign targeting X customers with Y message because I've got credibility built on that my command of the data.
Yeah, that's super powerful. And I mean, you are so much speaking our language. I mean, as a digital agency, that's what we do for a living, is, make all those, campaigns happen and drive those kind of results. If you're a CMO and you're coming into a new role and you've got an organization that's not really thinking that way. So let's say you've got a team that's mainly thinking about content and creative, and they've got maybe it's just a legacy of not, maybe senior management hasn't demanded that kind of rigor from them in the past, but you're coming in and you want to implement this kind of a model. How do you get there? How do you transfer? How do you turn the ship from a marketing organization that's more, again, more creative and content oriented? And not that creative content is unimportant, as I'm sure you'll share with us, but how do you kind of switch into a model that is more data driven?
Yeah, that's a great question. And look, I don't want to disparage creative at all. I grew up in product marketing, right? Years and years and years. I spent 10 and almost 15 years in product marketing before I became a CMO. And I have an undergraduate degree in English. So Lord knows I like to write, right? And I will sit there and debate the finer points of the Oxford comma with you on. We can talk about differentiation and benefits to your heart's content. Uh, Writing is my passion. And I love working on the creative stuff because creative is frankly the most fun part of marketing, right? I mean, who doesn't want to work at the agency building the cool videos and the new website with the great graphics and the art and the animation explainer videos? Like, That stuff's great, and I absolutely love it. And so it's important, as if we've talked about data, I respect and love and appreciate the creative piece as well. And a good CMO has a foot up to their knee in both camps, right? But the question that you asked is how you transform a marketing organization. And the answer to that is carefully and transparently,
Mm,
right? I actually had that challenge when I came here to Therapy Brands. There was literally no demand gen funnel when I walked in. In fact, when I was interviewing with the board, that was one of the questions that they were talking to me. They were like, we don't really know what our return on our marketing investment is, Justin. If you take this job, we're going to be expecting you within 90 days to start being able to explain to us what our marketing investment is generating. They
mm,
were real clear with me. So I knew I had that mandate. I also knew I had a team that just was not doing that. They'd never been asked, right? And so you have to explain to them why it matters.
mm,
Some of the conversation you and I have just been having around improving our credibility, enhancing our efficiency, making us more effective, right? And then you have to show them how it works. And so, I mean, literally, when I sat here, I used pulled up in my first all hands meeting, I pulled up the definitive demand gen funnel and said, "This is my old company. This is how we track leads, right?" And I walked them through MQL, SQL, wins, cost per lead, conversion rates, bookings, ACV. I said, and you see their eyes start to like bug out. And you're like, relax. We actually have all this data. We just haven't put it all in one place, and we haven't made it part of our rigor to look at it.
mm,
Now we are. And so, you start showing people the data and you start working through it with them and you show them. And then I put an operating mechanism in place. Every Monday at 3 o'clock, I sit down with the demand gen team and we do a detailed deep dive at the funnel. The first couple of meetings, I'm asking questions about the funnel. They had no idea how to answer the questions I was asking. After a while, they started to figure out, Justin seems to ask the same questions every Monday. I wonder if it would be helpful if I had an answer to those questions,
mhm,
right? Why did your MQL rate go up or go down? Let's have an answer. And so they start learning and they start teaching and they start getting there. And, you make it a risk-free, penalty-free environment. I always tell my team, I said, I don't care if it's good news or bad news, just don't hide the news from me.
mhm,
I can deal with bad news. I will go and defend whatever number you give me, provided that number is accurate. You can't give me a number and say, oh, no, no, tomorrow is 12, today's 11. No, whatever the number is, I'll take it good, bad, ugly, and I will take all the bullets from whatever other executive there is. But we've got to understand the numbers and you've got to be 100% truthful with me. So it's a cultural transition, right? And then the team starts to feel like, I then implement next steps, like they feel ownership. So I'm no longer giving them the metrics. I actually started planning after about 9 months here. I started giving people quarterly budgets and giving them a target and saying, how are you going to get there? And it's like, you have like $500,000 and you owe me 2,500 MQLs at
mhm.
a 40% conversion rate. Come back in 2 weeks with a plan. And I want you to be able to walk me through. I expect this activity to give me 1,000 MQLs, this activity to give me 2,000. This one only going to give me 20, but it's important because of this. And you spoon feed it to everybody and you empower them. And then ultimately it just becomes part of the culture that's here.
Yeah, I love that because I'm going to ask you about systems in a minute, but this cultural piece is just so important, right? I mean, another approach could be you go in, you fire everybody who's there, fire the agency, and you bring in new people that you trust to do the job. But it sounds like, a approach that's building your culture is transforming that team that you got, building on the skills that they've got, and empowering them. And I love what you said about the trust, the delegation that you talked about, the ownership, the and getting them to understand what the goals are, explaining the why. That's all so important. Any hard lessons on what not to do in that cultural transformation?
Yeah, the biggest one is not to make people feel bad,
Mm,
right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, gee, I want to do bad at work today. I want to have a bad day, right? I don't want to do my job well. No, people come to work and like, I want to excel at my job. Whatever my job is, I want to do it well. I mean, you always get the bad egg and the outlier, but I'm a big believer that 99% of the population wakes up and whatever job they want to do, they want to do it to the best of their ability,
Hmm.
right? And so if the numbers aren't looking good, you start pointing fingers. This is your fault. Why did you do it? Why is this bad? What did you do wrong?
Hmm.
No, you never want to say that, right? You gotta ask, all right, how did we wind up here? What do we need to do to fix this? How can I help you? What do you need from me? Right? And so you always make it about the problem and never about the person.
Hmm.
And particularly in a transformation like this, when people aren't used to being measured and suddenly their results are getting measured, they can get a little defensive,
Hmm.
right? And it's your job as the executive to get rid of that defensiveness and create a psychologically safe space for people to learn and evolve.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said. It's make it about the problem and not the person. And I bet that leads you to all kinds of conversations about strategy, messaging, content, channels, budgets, right? You're kind of mixing all that together, but you're creating this safe space where people are free to really share their ideas and come up with the best thoughts they have to really solve those problems, right? Because otherwise, you probably will own all the problems. If your team's not solving them, you have to solve them all yourself, and that's very difficult, right?
Exactly. And the other thing, and this is a really key lesson, and I emphasize this, I have an all hands meeting every Friday, 11:30 a.m. And that I get on, there's no slides, there's no agenda. Usually I scribble down some notes on like a index card or something at my desk of like what I want to cover. But one of the things we talk about is we talk about our demand gen funnel. And what I emphasize to the team is that yes, these are the demand gen numbers, but I want to be real clear. These are our numbers. Every single person on this call right now is responsible for these numbers. Because yes, we could have the best demand gen team in the world and they could get 1,000 people to a webinar. But if we have nothing good to say and our content is bad, well, that's product marketing's fault and that webinar is a total failure, right? So we got a product marketing there. If all of our creative isn't crisp and refreshing and clean and engaging, well, we're not going to be able to get people's attention to come to the webinar. And so I emphasize, and when we celebrate the numbers, I'm like, this is our victory.
Hmm.
It's not, Anna from the demand gen team beat her number. It's we beat our number for our physical therapy product, right? And I think that is really powerful for the team so that everybody feels like we're in this together and we're all rowing. And it also helps the demand gen team feel like it's not just Justin pushing on me to get my number. He's pushing on the whole organization to get to our number.
Yeah, that's super important. Talk to me about systems because systems are obviously really important to getting the right data. And are you seeing AI have an impact right now on the data part of what you're managing and measuring, or is it still, the more traditional systems that you're using? Yeah.
We are using AI, but not for data and measurement. We can talk about what we are using AI for in a second. In terms of data and measurement, as I said earlier, we've got a whole MarTech stack. We have HubSpot as our marketing automation tool, and Salesforce is our sales system of record. And then we've got a whole bunch of, a website. I've got A/B testing tools. I've got, Zoom info stuck in the stack, and I got my marketing operations budget is pretty substantial, right? I mean, marketing is a technology-driven function nowadays.
Hmm.
And so I then work with our internal reporting team to have them pull the data out of the databases and put that, frankly, right now it's an Excel dashboard that I look at. Ultimately, it will be a Power BI by the end of the year. And so all those systems are good. We've deployed AI is in content generation. And all the fears about AI replacing content marketing, they're overblown, right? It's not going to replace it. It is going to accelerate it, and we have seen the impact of this acceleration. The best thing I can say about AI software in marketing is that it solves the blank sheet problem.
Hmm.
How often have all of us as marketers sat down to write something and you push new on Microsoft Excel And there's that blank page, and you go, great. How do I get started? Right? What's the first word? Oh, that doesn't work. Everybody's done that. If you're in marketing, you face that problem. What I love about AI tools is you can input content and prompts, and I'd say it gets you 50% of the way there, maybe 55% of the way there. I've yet to see anything come out of AI that does not require the touch of a human to really personalize, crisp up, and make better. But if I can make every single one of my product marketers and my content writers 50% faster, wow, right? If I can do the mundane of, teaching an AI tool our tone and voice, and then feeding in a positioning document and say, write an invitation to a webinar happening on, June 6th at 10 a.m. on XYZ topic, and, offer an Apple iPad as a raffle ticket, right? That comes back and that's 55, 60% of the way done. I don't need to rewrite that every time. Like AI can do that for me, right? And so we actually have AI enabled everybody in the marketing team with a tool on their desktop to do that.
Yeah, great ideas. And, it feels like, a big part of your methodology is really solving problems and getting things moving faster, and using AI to do that. It can be a key way to do that. Well, Justin, this has been a great conversation of being a data-driven CMO. Thank you for joining and sharing your thoughts and experiences. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about your experience or connect on this topic, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Best way is to hit me up on LinkedIn. It's just linkedin.com/in/Justin Steinman. And then you can find me and catch me there.
Great. Thanks again for joining and for the conversation.
Thanks for having me.